Happy Tuesday night. What's up, y'all? What's up?
Yay.
How's everybody doing this evening? Hope everybody's doing well this evening. It is Kia McLean and
Shamika Arnold, the DAR therapist.
what up? How y'all be? How y'all be this evening? Y'all doing all right? Y'all doing all right?
Hey, is y'all doing all right?
What it
Y'all,
do? What it do?
I'm doing fine. On
Ooh,
cloud nine, you can do what you wanna do.
hey,
Okay.
hey, hey. So y'all know we gonna bring some energy. We gonna bring some energy.
And put on my glasses so I can look like a smart girl.
So y'all ready for this or nah? Y'all ready for this conversation tonight or nah?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, we
First,
ready. We ready. We ready.
is ready.
All right, y'all. So I'm sure you saw the topic for the evening, which is generational love curses. Generational love curses. What y'all know about that? And let me flip. You see the time.
The timer. Set
The
the timer.
time.
Let's get it together.
Okay. Okay, darlings.
Let's do it.
Date affirm the real family. Hello,
Hello.
Floyd. Okay,
Hello.
so
Good morning. Evening.
look, we gotta tell y'all something. So Shamika is super mama and she be doing it by herself.
Oh
So
yeah.
sometimes we be running a little late. So we appreciate you all's
I
patience
know.
because she be having to run around and do all the things. Hey Don,
Man.
what up? What up? Happy
Oh,
Tuesday
look, it goes on
evening.
this side now. It's on
Mm-hmm.
this. It's right there.
It's
Let me
right
see.
there. Yeah. So sometimes she be running around. So we be starting just a few moments later
I know.
sometimes so
Thank you
she can
guys
get
for being
settled.
so patient with me. Thank
So we
you.
appreciate you all's patience, okay?
Thank you.
So let's get this thing started. We're going to talk about generational love curses. And babe, if you can put that definition up there for me, I'd appreciate it. You wonderful, sexy producer, you. So let's talk about generational curse. It's the cumulative effect on a person of things that their ancestors did, believed, or practiced in the past, and a consequence of an ancestor's actions, beliefs, and sins being passed down. Let's talk about it,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
Let's talk about it.
I know when you brought
So,
it up, I was like, "Oh, what's good? This gonna be a good conversation." I don't even know what this
this go, we be rolling with it. We be rolling with it. So, the great thing about this conversation is this can be a very interactive, engaging conversation. So please engage with us, share your own personal thoughts about this. We're going to be sharing our thoughts. These are our own personal, private thoughts. Nobody is saying it's right. It's just based on our experience, based on our knowledge. And so we're going to share that with you. And again, of course, you can definitely uh, share your own thoughts and your own experiences as well. This is a conversation for us all. So we all came from somewhere, right? Like being part of a family history, that can bring joy, it can bring peace, it can bring structure, it can bring a number of things, right? And I think it's important to note that it can also bring some challenges, it can
is.
bring some pain, it can bring some brokenness. And so some of those things get carried down and passed down to family members. We
Right.
sometimes watch other family members in that generational pain and trauma. And as a result of us watching them in those situations, we sometimes get that,
Yes.
right? Like it passes down to us.
It becomes the norm.
It becomes the norm.
Hmm.
So there are times where there's even genetic dispositions that affect us, right? Some things are genetic. Think about the person that has alcoholism in their family, like in my family. Alcoholism is a family thing. I can name on two hands, alcoholics in my family. I
Mm-hmm.
can also name some toxic traits like violence with some people in my family. And so there's some things that are predisposed that I know I'm aware of, right? And so I have to be conscious of those things because those are things that I saw, those are things that I'm aware of. And so I have to put practices in place to ensure that I'm not conducting myself in some of those same ways. And so there's we can if we talk about some patterns, we can talk about cheating, we can talk about secrets, we can talk about pride. Those are just a few examples, but there's a ton of examples of how some patterns can even be passed down to us. And these patterns can be detrimental not only to that individual, but it can affect the offspring. And this is how it gets passed down generationally.
Right.
So it's almost like they're passing down that inheritance to us,
Mm,
right? So there are people who can pass down an inheritance again of love and peace and joy and togetherness. And then again, there's the families that can pass down some other toxic things. And I think a lot of times what we see is a mixture of both.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes, though, you can have more on the side of the trauma and the
Done.
toxicity,
Mm-hmm.
right, than the peace,
Mm-hmm.
the love, and the joy. And
Right.
so, as a therapist, how do you see that show up sometimes when you may be speaking with clients, and in terms of whether it's relationship with themselves, relationships, love relationship and partnerships, whether it's in friendships, do you ever see how some of these things are generational when you guys start talking about family dynamics?
Yes. So, and the thing is too, there is a study, and I cannot remember the terminology. It's a term where trauma is passed down to 8 generations. So, any trauma that has occurred passed down to 8 generations. And so that's like a study that was done. I forgot what the term is called. My son remember the term, but so yes, definitely you can see where the trauma keeps on showing up in each family line, and so it's always interesting. It doesn't, and sometimes it's interesting because when you look back on family relationships, there is a type of therapy that I do where we look at like the relationships genealogically, right? So we're looking at the mother and the father relationship, the relationship with the grandparent and each parent and the siblings and all about, and then as we start talking about it, they start seeing the patterns of behavior, like, oh, when you start sitting down and doing this genealogical breakdown of everything. So definitely yes.
And so I wanted to talk to you and ask this question. And if anybody else has questions relating to this, please feel free to jump in on the Facebook side, on the Instagram side, on the YouTube side. If you have questions relating to this, feel free to jump in at any time. So I wanted to talk about attachment style because I think attachment style is also has a correlation with this generational curse that sometimes passes down. And so do you think that there's a link with the attachment style, like the types of attachment style that people tend to have? And can you talk about different attachment
I
styles?
was gonna say that, but I had a handout about attachment
Oh,
styles at work. I could have brought
ah,
the different
oh,
attachments. I think it's like four different attachment styles, and my phone is being used for the
oh,
Instagram
dang.
over there. Oh wait, I got
So
it.
I know that there's
Okay.
one that's called anxious attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the attachment style, from what I know about that one, um, is that that's the person that is a lot of times seeking a lot of validation, um, that can sometimes be nervous or have anxiety about their partner leaving them, or not having a desire for them, or like there's just always sort of like this panic surrounding around
Right.
that relationship. So that's just kind of like what I remember about hearing about the anxious attachment style. um and you said
So
there's four.
4. There's 4 attachment styles. There's secure attachment, ambivalent attachment, avoidant attachment, and um, disordered attachment. So secure attachment is um, positive emotions. You learn again great parenting style. So the way you so attachment. Okay, so attachment is the way you form relationships, right? So the way you form your first forming of relationships are with your parents, and so or your caregivers, and
Mm-hmm.
so depending on how healthy or unhealthy they were can create an unhealthy or healthy attachment with the children, right? And the children learn from that. They learn that about relationships, right? They take it to relationships. So what they learn
Mm-hmm.
from their parent, their caregiver, they take to their relationships. And so you have the avoidant attachment where the kid might have avoided the parents because maybe the parents were um, argumentative. They didn't really feel safe with the parents, so they avoided them. So when they get into relationships, they tend to avoid a dismissive. So that what they tend to do. Oh, see, that's what I was looking. I was looking for that one. Anyway, so what you do is because the parents were dismissive and the child avoid. It was like the parents are dismissive, so they don't interact healthy with the kids, so they dismiss the kids and the kids like avoid them or the parents avoid the kids. So it's like this relationship thing. And so what you do in a relationship, what you'll do is that's where you'll self-sabotage, because I don't want you to leave me first, so I'm going to do things to either it's going to be I'm going to either be very like I need you here, or I'm going to because I don't want you to leave me, or it's going to be this I don't want to be connected. I don't want to have a
Mm-hmm.
connection, if I'm saying
And
that
that's
right.
the dismissive part.
Yeah, if I'm saying this right, because I should have read up on this before. So I'm gonna say right now, it might not. You guys might find the truth, and then I'll be like, "Oh, okay, thank you."
Okay, so let's talk about the avoidant attachment style.
Well, that was the one I just mentioned was the avoidant one.
Oh, that was avoidant. Okay.
Yeah,
What about ambivalent?
ambivalent, like cautious, like very cautious. That's when you be like, I don't trust nobody. You know, um, I don't trust nobody, anxious or ambivalent. So it's like I'm leery of relationships because it's not safe. Because again, maybe your parents, um, I know I can think of like so. Say if your parents were like so, think of bipolar, right? Because everybody say they're bipolar, but not everybody's bipolar. We just have some tendencies that might be like, oh, you're bipolar, but they're not all diagnosed bipolar. So say if your parents were like, oh, for instance, okay, um, so say if your parents were like, I love you in one breath, but then in the next breath, they're like, I'm giving you a butt whooping. But you said you love me, right? And so I don't know. So then now I'm anxious about what love really means, So I'm,
Mm,
I'm anxious about, and so I'm not sure. So I'm leery in relationships where I'm like, I don't like. So I'm always worried, or like I'm always worried or fearful or overthinking about if that person's gonna stay with me, if they're gonna leave me, like, and so yeah.
yeah. And then we talked about the secure attachment where it's more of a healthy um, type of attachment where there's healthy communication, there's support there, there's understanding, so
Right.
you don't have to attach in that toxic, unhealthy way.
And this like it's also, you allow your partner to have freedom. Like it's not a control, it's not, it's about having like the space, giving them the space to be themselves, right? The space to choose for themselves. So I'm not going to force you or make you be in the relationship with me, but it's like we are equally communicative, and I'm not looking at your phone because I don't trust you, or so it's very healthy relationship that's very communicative.
So, have you ever seen someone have a mixture of these attachments? Or can you have a mixture of these attachments?
Mm, mm. Because now, okay, so that's interesting. Because I'm thinking, like, how some people says, oh, I'm healthy, but what if they're not healthy? Like, so there's certain areas you're healthy in, like I'm healthy financially, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not healthy in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in relationships, hmm, I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think it is. Yeah, because if you're secure in the attachment, is if you have a secure attachment, then it's secure. Then there's no, unless you have shown that you're not. But then again, if it's secure, then I'm going to release you. I'm going to allow you to choose what you want to choose and go forth. Be
Mm-hmm.
gone. So yeah, no. So yeah, I don't think they can dwell to in one, multiples in one relationship.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
because then
wondered about,
Because then that would be the anxious ambivalent, or the
yeah, I
yeah.
wondered about that because I was like, so I just watched Love is Blind. I kind of like got into that show,
Hmm.
and I found myself like dissecting all of these different people's
Relation.
personalities,
Uh huh.
right? And I
Hmm.
could tell like some of the people were completely avoidant. I can tell some of the people, um, they presented themselves with one person as secure, they presented themselves with another person as avoidant, they presented themselves to another person as anxious. That's why I asked that question because
That's
one
interesting.
one particular person on the show specifically, I watched her when she spoke. So the premise of the show, for people that don't know, is they put you in these pods and you are talking to people. So the point is that you don't get to see them. You're just having a conversation and you're creating a
Relationships.
relationship based on just talking,
Hmm.
right? And so you do that for 2 weeks. And then either you get engaged to a person or you don't, right? And so one person on there specifically, I saw her talk to this one person and she seemed pretty confident and secure. And then I saw her talk to another person and she seemed like she didn't want to attach because she had fear. And then I saw her attach with another person and become very anxious, like, oh, but I got to have him. I want him so bad and I need that relationship so bad.
Mm.
So that was kind of odd to me because I was like, is that really an attachment style or is that just you not being authentic to who you are
Right.
and
Right.
kind of just swaying with the energy of those people to
Yes,
be
and that's what I was gonna
comfortable?
say too. That's what I was gonna say too, and I was gonna say that too because too it because I found myself, it's so interesting. Okay, so I found, so in one relationship that I don't believe that could happen, right? But
Hmm.
in different relationships, you might be different things because that person will pull something out of you. I remember in a relationship, and I was like, that's not even my character. That wasn't even my
Hmm.
character to even be that. And I realized I can feel people pull, or yeah, I felt like he was pulling away, right? But it wasn't this
Hmm.
pulling away, and he was telling me something different. So I became anxious because there was no oh, somebody says I just looked at Instagram. Somebody made a comment. Bria Love says, I guess it's the rules of attraction, but it's interesting how. Right. So the rules of it. Well, no, because the rules of attraction is you attract what you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But or what you attract the frequency you're in too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the rules of attraction.
Yeah.
And so, but when it comes to people, like you have to be really. That's why we said check in with yourself when you talk to people, because it's important that you know you.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you know you and you're in a relationship and something changes, you might not know, you might not see the change, you might not see what it was, right? But something has changed because you responded differently, like something's off. And I felt like, and I remember feeling like something was off, but I was like, I mean, okay, I'm gonna tell you what I did, and I'm embarrassed to say it. So what I did was, this is not my character. I never did this before. Okay, one more time. But still,
We know you ain't never done this before.
maybe once before this one, but still, this was the first. Oh my gosh. So I went up, so I drove up to the guy's house, and I don't know, and I didn't, did I think he was messing with somebody else? Because he always used to say, right? He always used to say, I don't like drama. I don't like drama because I'm raising my girls. But when somebody says that, pay attention, because sometimes they use the author, the creator, and the finisher of all that drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what, and I was like, let me go. I don't even. It was. I just knew after the fact. I was like, after all of it, after everything, I was like, that wasn't even my character. So he was doing something, and anyway, so I snuck up to his house. Went to his house. It was nighttime. I was about to knock on the door, but then I heard talking and behind the door. So I'm listening at the front door, right? And somebody unlocks the door, but the walkway to the door was too far, so I couldn't turn the corner fast enough. So his sister came out. I was like, "Who is?" As I'm running away from the door. Hmm.
That's okay. We've all done something that wasn't quite in our character before.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody won't share on here, but we've all done something out of our character,
Ooh. So
right?
there you go. You're welcome, Sharon. Oh, that was that was one of my. I was so embarrassed.
But that would be
I just was
that.
honest though. I said, I was sneaking up to the door. I was like, I was trying to be nosy and see what's going on. But it was out of my
Would you link
character.
that? Would you link that to your attachment style, or would you link that to something generational?
Well, see, I would see neither, because again, um it wasn't, because it was, see, again, it was that there was whatever was shifting in the situation. That's why I said it was out of character. So it wasn't really an attachment style, because that's not
Mm-hmm.
my attachment style. And so and maybe I'm trying to think, was it at that time? And it wasn't at that time. So when I was, that was out of character, because he was telling me something, but something else was going on else, and so I was acting out of character because of how they portrayed. Just like how you said, the woman in each different situation, she was a
Mm-hmm.
different person. So it could have been the lack of knowing self, right? The lack of knowing self,
Mm-hmm.
manipulation,
Yeah.
or what that person in that space needed, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when he was doing that, it was this, and I realized later, like, okay, it was a pulling away of, but then it wasn't this honesty behind it, and so it caused me to be like, something's going on, and so I was like, and I did that, and I realized later, because I realized later what it was, and I realized that I have to pay attention when shifts occur, and is it like me, this really being me, or is this, that's why I have to know me, because I have to realize, like, okay, that was not me, and this was something that was, I can't explain, am I explaining it right? Like, it was like, the shift and the movement.
So so what it sounds like is that, so, and in terms of what we're talking about, there are generational love curses that pass down with our family. There
Yeah,
are attachment styles that is linked with that, based on how your caretaker or your family, your parents
which
raised
would still be
you,
generational. That would
right?
still be
It's linked. It's linked,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And then there's that, you not really being confident and knowing who you are, and allowing your character to change based on the person that you're dealing with, which can still, I think it can still be tied
Tied to.
to our generational curses and our
Mm,
attachment style. Because the
okay.
reason I say that is because, if, for instance, you saw, even if you didn't see a parent or a caretaker do this, what if it's that you saw a close aunt or uncle interact this way? What if it's,
Mm,
you saw an aunt go check on her husband,
mm,
and you felt like, oh, okay, well, that's what you have to do this type of relationship, and that person is bringing that out of you
mm,
because they're
mm.
not being honest, they're not showing up even authentically as themselves, right? So it
And
causes
even I
us.
didn't see, so even what you're saying, even that, like I didn't see, it wasn't that I didn't see an aunt do that, but it was that at my dad wasn't as like it wasn't a lot of, okay, I'm gonna say this, it wasn't a lot of men in my life that I saw that were faithful at that time, that were faithful or could be, honest
Mhm.
and upfront. So
Yeah.
okay, okay, good
So I think
job.
subconsciously we think about those things, right? Subconsciously, it's like, well, I saw other men do this. And it may not have happened to me, but I saw it happen to other women.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I feel like it can happen to me when they do certain things. And if you witness those certain things, like them not answering the phone, or them not responding, or them not showing up, that can cause you to start to think, based on what you saw. This can be a very subconscious thing.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what I saw, maybe he's cheating on me. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
he's doing these things. And then you become anxious about those things, when what we should be doing is looking, not even looking, we should be partnering with people that don't give us that anxious feeling, that
Yes,
don't give us that
yes,
doubt and
that
fear,
yes,
right?
but even in partnering with somebody to do that, again, it goes back to you creating that in within you. So when you become secure within, when you have a secure attachment with your own relationship with self,
Mm-hmm.
then those then you'll create healthier dynamics, and you won't have to be like something going on, but you have to chase after it, right? I was chasing after to see what it was. Instead of doing
Mm-hmm.
that, it's like, oh, something's a little off. I'm gonna just, you know, I'll know. It's like I'll know to step back. I won't have to do all of that because it'll show up.
Yes.
It'll show up. It'll show up without me doing it. Because it eventually, had I waited, things would have showed up. And because he was moving somebody in, I didn't know he was moving somebody in. And
Mm.
he told me it was the auntie. Later on, I found out it was the chick that he was dealing with on the side.
Mm.
So my intuition was telling me that, but I didn't have to. But the
Yes.
action I didn't have to do all of that. I just knew something.
Right. That's now that's, so I want to touch back on that, but I want to address Bree's comment here. It's interesting how, depending on the attachment style you learned as a child, will either be the same as your parental figures or the opposite.
Mm,
And that I can see too. I can see it being, 'cause sometimes we work hard to go and do the opposite of what we saw, right? And in
mm,
that adjustment and in that practice of trying so hard to be the opposite,
right.
I think sometimes we can do those things, but I think it still kind of merges what we saw. And because, for instance, I would say things like, I'm not going to do certain things like my mother. I'm not going to do certain things like my grandparents. I'm going to be different. Well, in my thought process of thinking I was doing it different, I was actually doing it the same, but I was doing it in a different same, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
So it still
Right.
looked the same way, but I went about it a different way.
Different way.
But the whole time I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to be more healthy and I'm going to do it
Mm-hmm.
like this, and but it just looked different, right?
Right.
And I'll give you an example. I don't care about telling my business because it's part of my journey, it's part of my story,
Mm-hmm.
and I heal out loud. But one of the things that I would always say is I'm not going to be, arguing and fussing and fighting with the person I'm with, and I'm not going to, have violence in my relationship and things like that. And I watched my mother, I watched my grandmother, and I watched an aunt put their hands on men. And when I say put their hands on men, like they tussled with men, tussled.
Right.
And
Wow.
when I got angry, I would be like, no, I'm not going to do nothing like that. But I did. I didn't do it that way. I
Mm-hmm.
did things like throw things at people. Um, I would like go into these rages and I would be like, well, I didn't put my hands on you. Like, but
Mm-hmm.
I threw a big ass candle that could crack
Right.
on your head or, break into pieces and cut you. So
Mm-hmm.
I still did it. I went about it a different way. But I
Mm-hmm.
was still doing the same. There was still a level of violence, right? But it wasn't me putting my hands on them the way that I saw it.
Right.
I still had the violent tendencies.
Yes.
And so Bree said, this is also why you have to heal yourself and not expect someone to heal you. It's toxic and unfair. Absolutely. And so I think sometimes too, and to her point, this is why sometimes people are like, well, I need you, and you're my other half, and you're my better half. Terms like that create this whole dialogue around, well, I need another person to make me whole, which is why people get with people and just accept whatever they give
Right.
them,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because they feel like I'm not whole unless I have another person with me.
Right. Right.
You have to know and understand that I'm 100% whole, and another person, I'm looking for a person that's also 100% whole. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm lacking love of myself, I can't love you fully anyway, right?
Anyway. Mm-hmm.
And so, we just had this conversation the other day about self love,
Mm-hmm.
and that the answer is really, that's really what the answer is really delving into the power of self love
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that you are the person that has to show up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that and so for me now, even it took me a long time to get here. It took me a long time to get here. I was not here for a long time. It took me a long time to understand I need to have the self love
Mm-hmm.
for myself
Right.
first. So I think, and the reason why I know that I have it is because so I used to have an anxious attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I know that I have it now is I don't have the need or desire for anybody to do anything or give me anything.
Mm-hmm.
I give those things to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, we all know, I've said it before, Marcus has said it before. He travels for work. He's gone a lot. And so I don't have this, oh, he's gone, I got to just have him next to me. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have that feeling of
I
that
used to do
anxious
that. Yes,
feeling
I did used
that
to do
I
that.
just want him there. He just has
Mm-hmm.
to be around me all the time. I feel
Mm-hmm.
very comfortable operating in my solitude by myself. Do I miss him? Absolutely. Can we
Mm-hmm.
talk on the phone? Yes, but I don't have to have a person with me all the time to define me, to make me feel whole, to make me
Mm-hmm.
feel needed and wanted. I do that for myself first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the past, I would be like, I,
I
I
need
need
you
you
to.
here. I want
Mm-hmm.
you here. And I need you to give that to me for me to
That's,
feel loved and comfort.
that's
And
true. That's true.
so even understanding that and giving yourself grace
Mm-hmm.
to go through the process of healing yourself so
Mm-hmm.
that you're not seeking that validation, because that's what ends up happening. You're constantly seeking outward validation. Give
Mm-hmm.
me this, make me feel this, show up for me all the time, all of this, you know. No, your snoring does not give me comfort, babe. It does not.
Not what she said. Not what she said. I didn't hear her say that.
But this is why I journal.
Yes.
This is why I talk about journaling. If
Yes.
you don't journal, so and I'm gonna touch on it real briefly. How do you know how you feel? Because you thought about it? That's not gonna get you there. You have to literally get to a place where you're like, you know what? When I go back and I read my journal and I see that I had all these expectations for this person to do this for me, show up
Mm-hmm.
for me, give me this,
Yeah.
because I'm writing about it in my journal.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do this for me. He didn't do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't. And I'm not talking about, just the things that you should do in
Right.
partnership. I'm
Relationship.
just talking about these extra expectations that we can
Right.
come up with
Right.
that anxious attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and again, when I watched that show, I could see with this one lady, different from the person I was talking about earlier. She, I mean, the constant validation that she needed was,
Mm.
as I was watching it, I was like, did I ever look like that? It was just like, it was
Wow.
crazy. It
Right.
was
Right. Right. Right.
crazy.
Right.
And so she just could not thrive and grow in that relationship. They couldn't grow because she was constantly seeking the validation. She
Mm.
just could not move forward because she
Mm.
always was thinking about that. So let's address this next comment. I was abused mentally and physically by my mother most of my childhood. It happened so much that I believed that I deserved it. I had a real disconnect with women for many years, even after marriage. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's this thing that, I've been hearing a lot of therapists say, I've been hearing a lot of other people say, is the mother wound.
Mm.
And they talk about the wounds that, you know, specifically that men have connected to their mothers.
Mm.
And the wounds, in this instance, he's talking about being abused mentally and physically by his mother. There
Mm-hmm.
are also instances where the mother is just completely disconnected from you. And this other phenomenon that they're talking about is the pick me mother, the mother that wasn't there for you because she was constantly concerned with a man.
Mm.
So she neglected him. He
Mm-hmm.
saw this for, he saw that he was being neglected all the time so that his mother could get attention from a man, but the attention wasn't coming to that child. And
Mm.
so that child was like, well, if you don't love me, no other woman will love me. So
Mm.
I need to protect myself. I
Mm.
need to withhold my love from you. Even if you give me love, I'm not going to give that love back to you in the
Right.
same way
Right.
because love was withheld from me. If my
Mm-hmm.
mother withheld love from me, you're going to withhold love from me too.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't feel like you love me more than my mother did because that was
Mm-hmm.
my mother, right?
Mm.
And so sometimes that puts men in that um, position of feeling that they have to have their guard up all the time. And those
Mm.
are the men that struggle with commitment.
Mm.
Those are the men that struggle even with um, getting married
Right.
because they don't think that that person is going to love them the way
Mm.
that they could give them love,
Mm.
right? And it's all of it is kind of attached to fear. You
Mm-hmm.
have that
Mm-hmm.
fear based on what happened.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna bring up to you what you had mentioned earlier. You said I kept focusing on I'm not gonna do it like that. I'm not gonna be like them. And I was gonna say even connected to Bree's attachment, right? What you focus on is what what you'll start doing. And so
Mm-hmm.
what happens is when you say I'm not gonna do that, that's what you're focused on. What you're
Yep.
not gonna do. right? So what if we focused on, what if the focus was on, okay, what am I going to do instead of that? What do I choose to
Mhm.
do in this relationship? What do I choose? What do I want to do next in this relationship? How do I want to be more healthier instead of what I'm not going to do? Because then you got a whole list
Mhm.
of nots. But then if that's all you're focused on, then that's what's going to show up in the relationship. So what if we did
Yeah.
the, okay, how do I want to be show up different in the
Mhm.
in a relationship? Well, we talked about self love. So how do I want to show up different for myself? How do I want to show up for myself to love me? Right? How do I want to show up different
Yeah.
in a relationship? How do I want to show up
That's
different?
good.
So thinking on those terms, thinking about the what we want to do different
Mhm.
and
That's
focus.
good. And that's good. And I say that because I think people need to hear that because it was something that I didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like I was
Mm-hmm.
unaware that that was how I needed to go about it. All I knew
Mm-hmm.
was I
But I did
saw it as unhealthy.
right. I
Yeah,
knew I
I
didn't
saw it
want
as
that.
unhealthy
Mm-hmm.
and I knew I didn't want that. I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't got to a place of going to therapy yet and not realizing that okay, I need to focus on, what do I want?
Mm-hmm.
What how do I want my relationships to look like?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even get to a point of being able to write relationship affirmations or
Mm-hmm.
understanding how to love myself. But when you get there, because that's the thing. If we
Mm-hmm.
don't know these things, that's why we talk about these things. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't know these things, then you keep that generational curse going.
Mm-hmm.
And you think that well, that's all I know. Because that's the term now. Everybody, that's all I know. That's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the easy way out. Because I can just say that's all I knew. So I move like I've always moved because that's what I know. And it's
Mm-hmm.
unfair to a person that you connect with that may be healthy, that may have done the work. But it's also when you've done the work, it's something that you can tell up front so
Mm-hmm.
that you don't even get in a situation where you're in a
Right.
relationship with a person that
Right.
does that.
Right.
But a lot of us are coming from places where there's no therapy, there's
Mm-hmm.
no understanding of those things. I share with people often the terminology self love was not introduced to me until I was well in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And that came through music
Mm-hmm.
from listening to certain musicians.
Mm-hmm.
It also came from my love of poetry and hearing poets speak about this thing, but it wasn't something that they didn't talk about it in school.
Mm-hmm.
My friends weren't talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't TV shows that were referencing the need for therapy and the need for self love and reflection so that you
Mm-hmm.
can see, what is working for you, what's
Mm-hmm.
healthy and what's not. And
Right.
so many of us are just kind of learning these things as we go. But when you know better, we have a responsibility to do what? Do better.
Mm-hmm. and 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 even when it comes, because I feel like that's something that we continue to talk about and discuss, is self-love and
Hmm.
knowing who you are, right?
Yeah.
um Self-love, regard for one's own well-being and happiness, and so and happiness, right? So if we're looking for somebody else to um, to look out for us or to create our happiness, but we don't even know what it takes to create on our own happiness. That
Hmm.
wouldn't make sense for you to expect somebody else to know that. And so, what if, and I go back to, what if you start identifying what it is you enjoy, what it is that
Hmm.
makes you smile, what it is that makes you feel good about you, and you do it for you. And I know
Hmm.
that, like, people like, this is self love with getting pedicures, but what if that is an act of it, right? What if that is an act of it, but identifying that, does this make me feel good, or am I doing this for some to because um because so and so likes my feet done, right? You know,
Hmm.
are we doing it because I'm really nurturing me? And on top of that, if you're really genuinely nurturing yourself, then you'll say kind and nurturing things to yourself.
Yeah.
What are your
So
inner thoughts saying about you? What are you saying to yourself? What are your inner, and would you tell those inner thoughts to your child or your little self? Those same thoughts, you know?
mm, you talked about this before, about the happiness thing. And I think, if we can encourage you all to do something after this live, whether you do it tonight or you do it tomorrow, but maybe do a practice of 21 days of a journal on happiness.
Hmm.
Every single day, just journal about what made you happy at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Whether it was I woke up and I went outside and I heard the birds chirping, the sun was shining, whatever it may be, do those things, journal about it for just 21 days consecutively, every single day for 21 days, and
Yeah.
start to see, because I think sometimes we can't we can't see it because we just hold thoughts in our
Mm-hmm.
mind.
Mm-hmm. She said
So,
me on my way to Dairy Queen for self-love ice cream. I love that. I love that.
well, if you're on your way to Dairy Queen, you can give me
Chocolate dip.
a the chocolate bar
I need a chocolate. I need a chocolate dip cone with the
that
heart.
whatever that ice cream was you bought before. That's what I want. That's I'm extending my self love with you. I
Sharing.
want a piece of that self love.
Right.
So,
Yes.
um, the time has really been passing, you guys. So you see how much time we have in the hourglass left. So we want you all to, of course, join in this conversation. Do you feel like you have an attachment style or you've had an attachment style? Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Bree, for sharing, some of your thoughts on this. Does anybody else want to share what they believe their attachment style is or has been? Does anybody want to share their what they believe some of the generational curses have been in their family? What is it that you want to share about, some things that you've seen, patterns that you've seen in your own family? Of course, what you
I'm
want
about
to
to.
share.
Be like,
Okay.
I'm about to. I was gonna say I did an Akashic reading. Um, I did an Akashic reading, and Akashic reading is it's like where there's this the like a it's this, what am I trying to say? Like the book of life, right? So your life, there's a book about your life, and it's written in right. And so the Akashic records is something like that. So where it's like about your past lives, about your current life, what your purpose is here in this lifetime, yada yada. So it's always funny. Every time I tell my auntie and my family, I'm like, every time I do a reading, every time I do like a psychic reading or type of reading, my grandmother always shows up. They always say, "Oh, you got a strong maternal figure that's sitting here." And I give my grandmother, and I said, "Yeah, that's my grandma." Like everybody, like every time it's my grandmother. And so my grandmother, she was like, "What?" The Kasha read, she said, because I was dating this guy, and she said, "If somebody tells you who they are, you better believe it." And I was like, I can hear her say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, and so one of the things that my grandmother said, she was like, in our patterns, right? As she said, she said the women in our family have always given ourselves to the men or the children, like, and not given of themselves. And so it's interesting when we
Mm.
talk about self love and how I'm learning that, right? And how this is what she said in this reading. She was saying like, we tend to continue to give of ourselves to everybody else, right? And then we don't
Mm-hmm.
we don't focus on ourselves, and it's creating unhealthy, we're getting unhealthy, right? We're getting
Yeah.
sick, stuff like that, because we're not focused on us as the women in the family, the matriarchs in the family, to
Mm-hmm.
we're because we're always giving ourselves away. We're always giving ourselves away and not
Yep.
pouring into ourselves. And I noticed that on that side, and I noticed that on my mother's side. That was my paternal grandmother, and my maternal family. We've all same thing. It's I remember my grandmother saying, I remember my grandmother. I said, Grandma, if we on an airplane, you know what the airplane say? With the mask and the oxygen, they say put it on you first. She said, I know what they say, baby, but I'm gonna just hold my breath and put it on the baby first. I said, no,
Hmm.
'cause you passed out, Grandma. That's why they told you put on your face first. She still was like, no, I gotta make sure the baby good. Well, you can't because you passed out, so he won't get the mask. You won't get the mask. Everybody passed out, and you dead already.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is definitely her. She definitely did a lot, but she gave of her, like she put herself in danger and harm's way to make sure her
Hmm.
kid, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, generational.
Generational. Babe, can you put that on the screen, please? Instead of talking about ice cream, we need you to be the producer.
This one
He's so
says for
worried
my
about some.
visa
He's so
visa.
worried about some dang old ice cream, Kate.
Was it V Isaac 01? For myself, I feel like my dad was pretty aggressive, angry to where I didn't want to be that, but in trying to do so, I end up reaching that same ways at times.
Reacting.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. So
No,
yeah, that's
babe. I need you to put the comment up there, not the definition.
and I don't know if you saw earlier. When we talked, I don't know if you were here earlier, but we were just talking about that about when you focus on what you're not gonna what you're not gonna do and who you're not gonna
Mm-hmm.
be like. That's the focus. Like, so what if now that you notice, okay, there were some behaviors I did display as my dad. So now, what if the question is now like, what can I do to have healthier behaviors, have a healthier way of expressing or communicating my frustrations or my anger? He putting up the wrong
The
one.
the last comment, babe. He about to be fired as the producer tonight. I see.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the Instagram comment by Isaac01. That's the comment we're talking
Because
about.
my
We're
dad and
about to
I
be.
was just had a conversation with me and my brother
Thank
had a
you.
conversation, and we just had a conversation with my I just had a conversation with my brother about being raised and how my dad because a lot of our men aren't they aren't capable of communicating their feelings because again society tells them that they if you communicate their feelings then you're weak, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so now and so then they say, oh, women are too emotional, but men are emotional. It's just that they show their emotions different. So there's aggression because we like they weren't taught they weren't taught to communicate their feelings appropriately, right? Especially growing up, we were seen and not heard, right? That was the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing. Children supposed to be seen and not heard. So when we tried to advocate for ourselves, when we tried to verbalize how our feelings or how we felt, we were told we were being disrespectful for talking back.
Yep.
So now so when we talk about generational curses, how we're talking about generational behavior. So now your dad because his parents did the same thing to him. His daddy did the same thing to him because his daddy said, "Shut up, or you get popped. Don't back talk." And then now he's doing it to you, and then you find yourself doing it to your whomever you're doing that to. And also when we talk about generational stuff, because I think even especially if African Americans culturally, so here's the thing, and this is just my point of view. It don't have to be for real. It don't have to be. It's I've never read it, but this is my point of view, right? So if our ancestors, if our mm, if our people were abused, right? And so there was this fear. Again, generational abuse and trauma travels 8 generations. So there was this fear. And so the fear was that you better not talk back, boy, right? And the trauma was I'm going to abuse you, your family, your children. I'm going to take everything from you, strip you from yourself. I'm going to strip you from who you are culturally, emotionally. I'm going to strip everything from you, right? And now we have this fear. So now we are so Now they taught us and they whooped us. They beat us and they whooped us. And so now, or they whooped and beat our great great grandparents, right? Great grandparents. And so now we teaching our kids. So now we're raised to teach our kids to be quiet. Don't speak up to master. Keep your head down. Don't look up. Don't look them in the eye because that's disrespectful. So now, now I'm going to teach you that because that's what they taught me, right? So now
Mm-hmm.
I'm passing that on to my child to be fearful and afraid to speak up, and you better not
Mm-hmm.
advocate for yourself. You better be quiet because master don't like that when you speak up for yourself because we're gonna get beat. And so this is what we're doing. This is just generational traumas coming
Yeah.
down from generations, and we stopping right. And so what if we stopping right here? What if that generational curse is stopped right here? What if everything stops right here, right now? What if you are the catapult, the conduit, the what?
The
Can you,
conduit.
the conduit to it changing? What
Mm-hmm.
if you are the conduit to it changing right here, right now, and that way it don't have to go to your kids? What if we don't have to look at a child advocating for themselves as disrespect? But what if we teach them, okay, baby, did you want to say that a different way? Let's learn work. This is how you can say it, and let's talk about it, and let's have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation, dialogue about it. This thing we can discuss. This thing we can't. I want you to do this, but this thing we can talk about. Let's talk about it, right? So you setting those boundaries and love, in love, setting by and teaching them self love and being able to. And when you teach them to advocate for themselves, you give them self love to be able to speak their words and speak their voice and give
Mm-hmm.
them a voice.
Yeah, that's good. And I think so. When I started going to therapy, Corey was 11, 12ish.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had already done some things that were generational curses in terms of how I raised him and how I reared him. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to go back after learning some different skills and
Mm-hmm.
tools and have a conversation with him and say to him, I owe you an apology.
Mm-hmm.
I realize that there are some things that I did that may have affected you emotionally and mentally, and
Mm-hmm.
that we need to have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
I wasn't always right. I don't always get it right. There are
Mm-hmm.
things that I'm still learning,
Right.
but I can assure you, as your mother, that my goal is to protect you, to nurture you, to love you, to care for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never my intent to hurt you. It's never my intent
Mm-hmm.
to do anything that is not healthy
Mm-hmm.
and showing compassion and love. And so by having that honest, real conversation with him, both he and I get to heal simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Both him and I get to understand that we can give each other grace and understanding
Mm-hmm.
and love and forgiveness.
Yes.
And I can also have conversations with my mom now and say, so recently, when I say recently, I mean like in the last couple of years, I had to tell my mom, you know, I don't think I always deserve to get hit on. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it was always right for you to hit me when I wanted to just have a conversation. I wanted to be able to tell you how I felt. And your answer was always, I don't want to hear it. You don't have feelings. What I say
Mm-hmm.
is what I say goes. It's what I say. And you know, you have to listen to everything I say. And I told her, I said, these are things that hurt me. These are things
Mm-hmm.
that, I ended up doing to my son that hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
And it never felt good to hit my son.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There was never a moment in
My dad would
time.
cry when he with me. That says
There was
something.
never a time it felt good to
Right.
hit my son.
Right.
And so I was like, even so for me, nobody else talked about it. I
Mm-hmm.
was the person that was like, this is not adding up. This does not make sense. And I realized that we are a culture that will say, I beat my kids and they got to learn the hard way, the same way I had to learn. And that's just what it is. But
Mm-hmm.
let's let's just wrap our head around this.
Right.
Hitting my son with a belt or even my hand hurt me to the core. Like
Right.
you just said, your dad would cry hitting you. I would
He
cry
would
when I walked
cry.
away
Me too.
because Why do you want to hit your child?
Right. I don't want to hurt my baby, but I didn't know what else, how else to
We
do it.
weren't taught to
I
communicate
wasn't
with our
taught how
kids.
and teach them communicate and deal with my own traumas that I had.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Don says, good point to the topic. Thanks, Don. Bree said it's also understand that while you may not be at fault, you have to take responsibility. Absolutely. You do have to take responsibility in the sense of not hurting someone else the way that you've been hurt. And this is what I'm talking about when people say, well, it happened to me. I turned out okay. But did you? Did
Right.
you?
You mean?
Because for me, I
Hmm.
can honestly say I didn't turn
Who
out all
said
right.
that? They was who said they was
They
my, that
Don said they would say this will hurt me more
me
than it
more than
hurt
hurt
you.
you. I used to think like, well, why
And
would I
that
do
was
it to
true.
hurt you?
They weren't
And it's
lying because we
right.
found out when we had to hit our kids.
Because it wasn't okay. We knew it wasn't okay. If I'm walking away
Hmm.
crying for harming my child, then I know inside it's not okay.
Hmm.
It's not okay. It's got to be another way. I just didn't know what the other way was.
Yeah,
It's got to be another way. You are right,
it's
and
got
it
to be.
right. So if it's hurting both of us, then nobody's healing.
Yep.
Nobody's
Yep.
healing. But we thought that's how we're supposed to do because that's how we get obedience. Because
Hmm.
that's what the colonizers taught us.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
see, culture, because I know that my African heritage, we told stories, right? They told stories, and we sat down as a community. And anybody
Hmm.
that affect in some cultures, I'm not saying all of them, but
Yeah.
we learned through stories. We learned through the community. Understand that the community is affected by your behaviors.
Hmm.
And it was a way of rearing a child. This
Yep.
was from this was from obedience from the people that was beating us.
Yep. Yep. That's real talk. And so these are the things that can get passed down and it can hurt us. It can hurt us as a complete community and a complete culture because
Yes.
what can happen is
Now you're
let's
angry.
go back let's go back to Visek one's comment. Visek one said, for myself, I feel like my dad was pretty aggressive and angry to where I didn't want to be that, but in trying to do so, I end up reacting the same way at times. That
Mm-hmm.
was me. I went to anger management twice. Thanks, babe. I went to anger management twice because I had so much anger inside
Mm-hmm.
of me. My anger came from the fact that I did not get permission to open my mouth and tell my mother how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
So I had anger that was simmering inside of me, and I would have outbursts. And what happens when you're placed in those types of positions, when you
Mm-hmm.
get out in the world and you have to deal with people, and over time, people are doing things, and you can't,
Man,
and you feel like you can't react because you
right.
feel
Afraid of
trapped
saying
the same
something.
way you felt at
Uh-huh.
home because you can't
Yes.
say anything. You
Yep.
get out in the world, that anger shows up in places, and there are people who have killed people.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who have done something to harm them their own selves. There are people who can't have healthy loving relationships with people
Yep.
because all of this stuff has been passed down, and
Yep.
we have to heal from this stuff so that
Yes.
we can have the healthiest relationships with ourselves first,
Mm-hmm.
and then in turn have healthy relationships with people in the world and in our communities.
And in order for us to do that, even that help self, we have to also learn to forgive our parents. We have to learn
Mm-hmm.
to forgive our parents because they only knew what they knew.
Yep.
That's how I had to heal with myself because I had to first allow myself to sometimes it happens so much that it stops hurting. You become numb. People say I become numb, but sometimes, I'm asked a question: is it numb, or do you just replace it with anger?
Mm. Mm.
Because if you're numb, then there's lack of feeling, but there's feeling because there's either anger. Because sometimes we use the anger instead of the hurt because the hurt hurts so much. I'd rather use the anger.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, so in order, and so that again means that there needs healing. There's healing that needs to be there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and it starts with, let me forgive them because they didn't know no better neither. They didn't know no
Mm-hmm.
better. They only knew what they knew.
Yep.
And and
Yep.
and and so and it's and then once you forgive them, you have to realize that you are deserving of all of it. No, it's just not. Okay. You have to realize that you are deserving of love. You are deserving of caring. You are deserving to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
You have to realize you are deserving of all of that.
Yeah.
And you can't know that unless you love self.
Yep.
And and with the abuse and the aggression, you don't learn to love self because they muted you. They muted you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what if now's the time to start that healing journey?
And I know we're past our time, but I also want to touch on the final thing that can happen that can truly hurt ourselves and relationships with others. And another thing that I saw happen on that show, and that is when you become the victim.
Mm,
And when you become the victim and you stay in that energy of
mm-hmm,
I'm the victim, I'm the victim, I'm the
mm-hmm,
victim, and that when you think that way and you feel that way, what happens is you are not healing from whatever it may have been. It goes back to what you just said. You're
mm-hmm,
not healing those scars and those wounds and that trauma.
mm-hmm,
And you ultimately will end up victimizing someone else as you're in that victimization mode,
mm-hmm,
or you you can never have happiness
mm-hmm,
in a full, wonderful, beautiful way,
mm-hmm.
because you're staying in a space of I'm the victim. And
Right.
here's the thing, many of us have so many traumatic things happen to us,
Mm,
and it's up to us, even though our parents may have done it, even though a sister may have done it, a brother may have done it, anybody may have done it, you may have even inflicted harm on yourself.
mm-hmm.
We have to get to a space where we start to forgive and heal. And forgiveness looks different for different people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness doesn't have to be I forgive you and you get to come back into my life. Forgiveness doesn't have to mean I forgive you and I'm going to just, it's okay
But
to
forgiveness,
about all the things you did.
exactly. And forgiveness. So here's the thing: in order to even fully forgive, is to love self first, and then you'll set boundaries accordingly.
Mhm.
You'll set boundaries. Just because I forgive you doesn't mean I'm gonna allow you, because see, I love me, so I'm not gonna allow you to come back in and hurt me because I
Yeah.
love me. So
Yeah.
I forgive you, but I trust exactly who you are and who you show me.
Mhm.
And
And
so that hurts me, so I will no longer allow that. So I love you, but you can't be here.
exactly.
You can't be here, but
Exactly.
I'm at peace here, and I love me here. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I know that was a lot, you all, tonight. I know that was
Oh, and thank
it
you for
it
sharing that too. Who was that?
yeah.
Thank you for
So
sharing that.
you all really shared some intimate things with us, and we
I know.
appreciate
Thank you.
that.
I
It
know.
takes a lot. It takes a lot to be vulnerable and
Yes.
transparent in that way.
And
But
I'm
this
honored that
is
you even chose to do that. So thank you guys.
mhm,
Thank you guys for sharing. That's
yeah.
beautiful. Thank
And
you.
it's an honor for us to hold space, this safe.
Hmm.
It's an honor for us to hold this safe space. And it means so much that people felt comfortable being able to
Hmm.
have that vulnerable, share that vulnerable space with us.
Thank you.
Again, we don't know everything. We don't. But we are people, the Kia McLean, the poet, Shamika Arnold, the therapist, Marcus Goodwin, and Junior Lilly, we are all people that want to see our people healed. We want to
Yes.
see our people whole. We want people to receive the love that they're supposed to
Yes.
receive out here.
Yes.
And love yourself first so that you can have that healthy, beautiful love that we all deserve.
Hmm.
And the only way that we can do this is by keeping this community safe. This
Yes.
is why this is why we always say share what you want. We're not going to push you and then eat the fish and throw the bones away.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we say may not be applicable to you. It may not be, and that's okay. But take what is good for you and release what ain't.
Mm-hmm.
But hold a space for it because you might need to come back and grab it.
Mm-hmm.
You might need to come back and grab it at some point. So if you guys don't have any further comments, if you guys don't have any questions, we're going to close out this evening. As we always do, this was heavy. It can be heavy. This topic can be heavy. And that's why we have a therapist with us here to kind of help us, as we talk about these heavy topics, because I talk about it from the fact that I've been in therapy for many, many years. So I just kind of share some things my therapists have shared with me and things I've learned over the years. And again, we have Shamika to share just from her knowledge and expertise and wisdom. So we're going to get this thing closed out, Shamika.
Okay, let's do a deep breath. Let's do 2 deep breaths. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you guys for sharing. Thank you guys for being on here. We are honored to have you guys just be with us to share and to just allow us to share our experiences and our expertise in certain areas. And so all of life comes to us with ease and joy and glory. How does it get any better than this? And what else is possible? Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you
Namaste.
guys. Namaste.
Peace out, y'all. We love y'all.
Seeing eyes of mine, you see, there are no trees inside of me.